Good day, everyone. May the gods be with you. Atleon exclaimed jovially as the council members entered the circular room, took their seats, and responded in kind. It seemed that all of them had returned aside from the young monarch who had sought fit to send a doppelganger in his stead. Such hubris, thinking sly old Atleon wouldn't notice. Then again, maybe it would have worked if said doppelganger hadn't been at least 10 years the child king's senior. Perhaps he should confront him about his absence later. Regardless, there's no use in pondering such trivial matters right now, for it seems that the Enowean representative has something he'd like to share with the council. At which point, the teddy bear-like alien turned on his podium's microphone and began to address the room. Just as the Inalus have managed to make some potentially accurate predictions regarding the nature of these Gaians, we too have taken the initiative to try and uncover their secrets, although having said that, I must admit that we haven't been nearly as successful yet. You see, the discovery of these Hellworlders has given us the rare opportunity to field test a new type of ship, one we've equipped with several exciting new modules, some of which allow us to study their planet and listen in on their radio communications from a relatively safe distance, as opposed to older, cruder, and not to mention more easily detectable methods. In that case, am I correct in assuming that you've already learned something interesting you'd like to share with the class? Atleon curiously asked, to which the Enowean hesitantly nodded in response. You see, we've been running their communications through various translation algorithms, but something doesn't seem quite right. So far, we haven't been able to make much progress at all. It's like their language keeps changing with every message we intercept. Even our most esteemed linguists just can't seem to make heads or tails of it. According to them, their language is a total mess and horribly inconstant. One second it sounds like a tranquil river that smoothly courses past their lips, and another it's more akin to a roaring fire being spat out. My God, the Hiruna's lookalike chimes in. Don't you see? They've somehow figured out that you've been spying on them and are now modifying their language accordingly. They're even more cunning than we thought. At which point the entire council room bursts into a panic. Oh gods, they probably already know where we are, one of the mushroom-like senators yells out before bursting into tears, which is followed by the Enowean representative who once again refuses to keep down his breakfast. In the meantime, the supposed king's entourage protectively surround their fake monarch while Atleon freezes in place. Being the cunning politician that he is, Alteon made sure to try and keep his expression neutral. Even if the rest of his body succumbed to his species' fear response, he could still trick the others into thinking he'd remained calm and collected, while they were busy despairing and wallowing in self-pity. Esteemed members of the council, please calm down, Atleon exclaimed as soon as he started to regain control of his body again. This is exactly what they want us to think. That is, if they're all that interested in finding us in the first place. Keep in mind, the last attack on their planet was executed millions of years ago. We're not even sure whether they're specifically looking for revenge or set on mindlessly spreading their corruption. Therefore, I propose that as long as they don't venture out of their system, we bide our time, gather resources, and stay the hell away until we've got the entire galaxy united and armed to the teeth. Yeah, about that, the Enowean interjected. You know how we just mentioned that we were spying on their homeworld from a relatively safe distance, he said while emphasizing the word relatively. Define, stay the hell away from. The Grand Vizier rested his face in his hands while letting out a loud, drawn-out sigh. All right, how close? About 2 light-years, more or less, the Enowean responded. From their system? Their planet. Ah, shit, Atleon muttered softly under his breath. While under normal circumstances, 2 light-years would have been more than acceptable, considering the nature of the looming threat, he wasn't sure whether it was worth the risk. Sure, they'd be able to learn a lot, but if caught, these Gaians would probably use torture, assimilation, or manage to somehow physically extract whatever information they needed out of the crew, at which point they'd know exactly where to come and look for the rest of the civilized universe. No, we can't gamble away our people's lives like this. We aren't like those monsters, we're civilized. Once the council meeting has concluded, I'll be sure to privately confront the Enowean on the matter and discourage the continuation of said mission. Gods, I'm such an idiot. Reka let out a sigh before slumping forwards onto her desk. There she was, on a Spectre-class recon vessel, the newest, most advanced recon ship the Enowean Confederacy has ever produced. Or so they'd claimed. She couldn't believe she'd actually taken the job. They lured her in with false promises of excitement, honor, and recognition, but in reality, all it had been was equal parts dull boredom and nervous fright. On one hand, she was stuck in a cloaked ship in the middle of cousin-fuck nowhere, while on the other, as the ship's resident xenologist, she was tasked with studying all she could about these Gaians, which, combined with her proximity to their homeworld, made her deeply afraid. What's more, it appears that the threat these creatures pose may have been somewhat understated. After all, it seems they're already in the middle of spreading their infernal corruption. As everyone knows, only the gods can create and shape worlds. For anyone else to try and simulate their divine craftsmanship was heresy of the highest order. Back home, the insinuation alone would be fought with ridicule and condescension. And yet there they were, building domed settlements on that red barren hellscape. Based on some of our sensors' readings, it appears that they were slowly assimilating it and turning it into yet another world for their dark goddess. Gods, will this be the fate of the entire galaxy if we don't stop them? Will all our cradle worlds get corrupted and turned into more Gaian hive worlds? The thought alone made her shudder and wince. No, I can't let them get into my head like that. The entire universe may be at stake. I should focus and finish my report as soon as possible. The rate at which they're expanding and advancing technologically may be way beyond our initial predictions. I have to send my findings to the Council as soon as possible. She suddenly got interrupted by what had to be the vile machinations of the Dark Goddess. Out of nowhere and without warning, the lights turned off, followed by various shrieks and cries for help reverberating from deeper within the ship. "Oh, gods, what is it now?" she asked, with annoyed frustration tinging her voice. The Enowean made her way to the hall where she was confronted by a small contingent of engineers, one of which was now shining a flashlight right into her face. "Ma'am, please stay in your room. There's been a problem with the ship's power supply. Don't worry, it's nothing major, but due to the curious nature of the issue, it might take a couple minutes for the backup reactor to turn on." The lead engineer informed her before he and his team took off again. Reka wanted to trust the engineer's words. This was most likely just a small issue stemming from the fact that the Confederacy had hurriedly slapped together various experimental systems onto a recon vessel with very little regard for power management protocols. Taking into account the threat these Gaians could pose, such a theory seemed fairly reasonable. But what if that wasn't the case? What if, just like with the extermination fleets, Gaia had lured us here, and now that we're in her sphere of influence, she'd no longer let us go? No, I can't think like that, she chastised herself. Falling into despair like that won't solve anything. I'm sure that an automatic distress call has already, oh no. A certain realization hit her like a bus. Whenever an Alliance vessel has a major systems malfunction, like for example a power outage, an automatic distress call will be sent out. A distress call that's easy to detect and powerful enough to reach civilized space. Of course, what the designers of said safety protocol hadn't taken into account was the potential proximity of a reality-ending scourge of hyper-adaptive, voracious horrors who might actually be able to pick up on said signal. Gods, what should I do? What can I do? What if they actually manage to reach us? Would they simply eat us, suck out our souls? What if they can assimilate us somehow, or instead use us to find our home systems? Intelligence-wise, they're supposedly on par with the rest of the universe after all. Before the young Enowean could give herself a headache from overthinking so much, the lights suddenly turned back on, followed by a chime and the captain's calming voice. "Good day, everyone. May the gods be with you. I first and foremost, on behalf of the Alliance and the great Enowean Confederacy, would like to apologize for the slight inconvenience. Rest assured, everything is fine and there's no need to panic, but unfortunately we will be stranded here for a little while longer. So with that being said, would everyone please gather in the cafeteria for a head count and for us to clarify certain unfortunate circumstances we find ourselves in? Thank you." Most of the crew had already made themselves comfortable by the time Reka arrived at the cafeteria. Luckily, she wouldn't have to wait for long, seeing as the GA Subtlety was a relatively small vessel with only a crew of about 70 people. A few minutes later, once everyone had been accounted for, the captain got on top of one of the tables and began to address the crew directly. Unfortunately, to everyone's dismay, Reika's theory had been correct. While one of the engineers had been quick to manually force an unexpected shutdown using only a wrench and some elbow grease, it was apparently already too late. The ship had sent out an automatic distress signal that, if picked up, the Gaians could use to track down their ship. As the captain had no doubt expected, the crew began to panic. Some pointed fingers and accused others of being saboteurs and traitors while trying to leave the now locked room prematurely, while others focused their fears inward and began to give in to whatever their body's favored response was to having just been told that they might get hunted down and ripped apart by a race of Lovecraftian horrors. "Everyone, please don't lose hope," the captain bellowed. "The chance that we should meet such a dire fate is fairly small. There's still a decent chance that they won't understand or will simply dismiss the signal, or perhaps we'll get rescued before those things find us. Keep in mind, while scary, they're still fairly primitive, so even if they reach us, there are still a few things we can do to defend ourselves. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna have the chief of security unlock the doors. We're all gonna retreat to our quarters in an orderly fashion. And in about 4 hours, once everyone's had the chance to calm down and regain their senses, we're gonna reconvene at the armory, and we're gonna prepare for whatever may happen. Don't worry. I know things may seem hopeless, but I'm sure that together we can get through this. Now then, who's with me?"